over the last few days, weeks, seen more reports on television networks and the written and online media of protests in Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel. We also last week spoke to an opposition Knesset member, Ofer Neiman, if you remember, who said he supported South Africa's case at The Hague in the International Court of Justice against Israel. So is the eternal pressure and resistance against the Israeli government and the IDF's war in Gaza, is it increasing? Ofer Neiman is a member of an organization called Israelis Against Apartheid. He joins me now on the Zoom link. Ofer, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Hope you're well.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Talk to me about what I am seeing on this side of the world of more reports of increasing protests. I've seen just one this weekend of protests in Tel Aviv against the IDF's incursion, their war in Gaza. What is the profile of people who are raising their voices of opposition in Israel at the moment?
Yeah, so you can say that there are more protests against the war. However, these rallies are still fairly small. I would say in the low hundreds at the very most. During the first weeks of the war, there was even more police repression against anyone trying to protest. It was almost impossible. Now, there is a slight opening. However, beyond central Tel Aviv, it's still very difficult. There was a protest in Jerusalem as well on Saturday night, and it was violently dispersed by the Israeli police.
We spoke to Ofer Neiman, a name that you're probably familiar with. He is an opposition Knesset member, and he told us while there is increasing disgruntlement and resistance to a Netanyahu-led government, there is still overwhelming support for the IDF and its current military action, particularly after October 7th. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so there's a fairly large sector of Israeli society. You could say these are the liberals or liberal Zionists who are opposed to Netanyahu and the right wing for various reasons, including some policies vis-a-vis the Palestinians, such as expanding settlements in the West Bank. However, most of these people indeed support the IDF, and after October 7th, they also justify the war on Gaza, which I call a genocide. Thank you, South Africa, for doing something about it. So these people are anti-Netanyahu, but not anti-war. And we are trying to convince these people who are a bit more open-minded than the settlers, the far right, that this war is stuck. If they don't care so much about the genocide, unfortunately, maybe they can realize that Israel is stuck in this war and that they must support a ceasefire and a captive exchange deal with Hamas.
Is the freedom for an expression of being anti-war currently in Israel? I refer to a Guardian.com article of a teacher by the name of Meir Barushin, who was fired and jailed for criticizing the military, and he says that many who agree with him are afraid to speak openly in public. Is his sentiments accurate?
Yeah. Meir is a great dissident. I would know that he was arrested for 2 or 3 days. So now he's free, but he did lose his job. I would perhaps, and you know more about it, I perhaps compare this to apartheid South Africa, the difference between white dissidents and black dissidents, opponents of the regime. So I think we can agree that back then white dissidents were more privileged in South Africa. I see, from my limited perspective, I see a certain analogy here. So yes, Jewish Israeli dissidents may, on some occasions, lose their job, and people are afraid to speak out. Occasionally, people get arrested, usually for short times, like Mail. But we still have a voice here. I mean, for example, I can tweet, post on social media that Israel is committing a genocide, that Netanyahu is a war criminal, and I don't think anyone is going to arrest me for that. So we have some privilege. People may face harassment on social media. Some of them may risk losing their job. So there is some persecution, but also some privilege.
Ofer, I don't know any poll, and you are closer to the coal face there, but give me a description on the Israeli population's appetite for a sustained peace process. And my personal sentiment is, why stop at simply just arguing for a two-state solution, when if we can use our imagination and call and say, let's, on Palestinians and Israelis, to talk about a single state. Let's use our imaginations of a single unitary state shared by Israelis and Palestinians. Ofer Kassif says it's great ideological, idealistic thinking, but that's pie in the sky at the moment. What is currently the appetite of Israelis for a sustained peace between Israelis and Palestinians?
Yeah, for now, this seems quite remote, the one state vision, which I support. I think that most Israelis, there is so much fear and loathing towards Palestinians here. I mean, that has been the case for decades, and that's the essence of Zionism, instilling fear and racism towards Arabs in the Jewish Israeli mind, seeing ourselves as a small minority, persecuted by, not just the Palestinians, hundreds of millions of Arabs who want to destroy us. So I would not count on some goodwill here and on a vision coming from Jewish Israelis. However, I would count on international pressures such as BDS, which I strongly support. And we have a campaign here, a group called Boycott from Within, who support the BDS campaign, to change the balance of power. And when that happens, more and more Israelis will realize that they have to do something. And for now, if it's not a one state vision, at least we can count on growing support for example, dismantling the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. And of course, lifting the siege on Gaza after this genocide comes to an end. And supporting some sort of solution for Gaza and the West Bank. Personally, I think that's not enough, and many of us will continue to campaign for a one-state solution. And there's more to be said. Perhaps if things go on, there will be some sort of collapse in Israel, and we will be driven towards a one-state solution.
For the time being, it requires a political change, a democratic process led by voters in Israel. Who is that political voice to lead? And I refer again to Ofer Kassif saying that while Palestinians need to be liberated, he believes that Israelis also need to be liberated within through a democratic process. What is the roadmap to that?
Yeah, excellent question. I mean, we have yet to see, at least among the so-called Zionist sector in Israel, which is the majority of Jewish Israelis, a party emerging which calls for anything like what we're discussing here. For now, what we can do as a small minority of dissidents is to talk to the Israeli public from the sidelines, perhaps, but we still have a voice. And together with this huge international campaign against apartheid here, we can hope that all this pressure will bring about a new political party in Israel that can push for some of what we're discussing here.
Ofer Neiman, really appreciate your time as a member of the Israeli group Israelis Against Apartheid. Really appreciate your time.